Good afternoon. I'm Linda Johnston with USA Payroll, and we're here to talk about Basic Payroll 101. And what we're going to do today is basically go through the terminology, glossary of terms. We're going to discuss what you need in employee handbooks. We're going to explain what you need in employee folders. We're just going to give you a basic idea of what people go through when they have to do payroll for your practice or your company. And this is Payroll 101 in a box. So the quick reference guide to payroll definitions, tax forms, and deductions. If you'll open up your little green and white folder that's under your book, you will see there's a glossary of terms. And basically, it's a review of the tax documents, pre-tax and post-tax deductions. And what those mean basically are the deductions that one would take away from a payroll check to get to the net payroll. If you have deductions that are pre-tax, if you have a gross of $1,000, say it's $100 for whatever the pre-tax deduction might be. It might be for a 401k. It might be for some kind of group health medical plan. So you would be paying taxes on the $900 with respect to the 401k. But with respect to any group health plan, or if you had a full 125 plan, you would also take Social Security, and Medicare would come from the $900. For a 401k, you would end up paying Social Security and Medicare on the full $1,000. So that's a pre-tax. There's two kinds of pre-tax, and then post-tax deductions would be something that you would have that maybe a uniform that you charge them for. That would come from their net pay, not their gross pay. The tax documents that you do is on the employee side, the I-9, W-4, and the Affordable Care Act declaration, whether you have health insurance for your employees or not. And if you have an employee manual, you would have them sign off on it. There are various things. If you have a drug and alcohol abuse policy, you might have them sign off on that. So that's kind of a review of the tax documents. The definitions of terms you have in the glossary, and it's much easier. What do you need in the employee's file for payroll? The basic is the W-4 and the I-9. The W-4 tells the employer how the employee wants to be withheld for federal tax purposes. Statuses can be single, zero, married to, and you as an employer have the fiduciary responsibility to deduct the taxes according to how your employee wants it deducted. The I-9 is something that we're going to discuss in length in a little bit and in depth, because it has been revised, reviewed, and the federal government has just made life a great deal of fun with respect to that. So in an employee's file, those are the two things you must have. I would suggest the employee application and anything that they sign with respect to their employment, whatever employment package that you have for them. Hiring and exit letters are an excellent strategy. A hiring letter sets forth the terms and conditions that somebody is going to be involved in the employee situation. It basically goes through what their duties are, what you expect from them. The exit letter is also important because you want to make sure that you have documentation, that you've gone through the whole gamut. Why did you leave? What caused it? How do you feel about it? It can be a very positive experience, even if they don't leave on the best of terms, because you have a documentation with respect to it. And also, you may find out some problems that you didn't know were existing with respect to your employees. Disciplinary documentation, that is really important. Disciplinary documentation, I have forms that anybody can get from me, but the best one that I've ever seen used, take a blank piece of paper, put the date on the top, a date line. 4 of the most common things that happen: you're late, you didn't call, it has to be something that's very quantitative, because you can't say you didn't do your job properly, because that's just it's not concrete enough. Or you came to work and you smelled liquor on the breath, or they were obviously not acting in a proper manner that could cause drug or alcohol abuse. And then, of course, you have the right to have them tested, if that's in your employee manual. But you need to have them acknowledge the situation, you need to find the solution, and then everybody needs to sign off on it. And that's very important because that can help you with state unemployment. Do's and don'ts for completing W-4s and I-9s. The W-4s, I gave you a copy of a 2014 W-4 in your packet. The W-4, there's 3 things that are really important. The employee needs to fill it out. You should not fill it out for the employee. The employee needs to fill it out. The only place the employer signs is at the bottom. They can ask you, well, how should I withhold? What you can tell them is, if you have 0 dependents, they're going to withhold more federal taxes from your check. If you withhold 9, they're going to deduct much less from your taxes. So that's about all you can tell them. There's a worksheet that they can complete. You can tell them this isn't set in stone. If you decide that you don't want to deduct in this way, just fill out another W-4 and give it to me. But don't say, well, knowing your condition, you probably should do single 0. That is not appropriate, and you should never, ever, ever do that. The I-9s we're going to go into in depth. And legally defensible, we're talking about the I-9 now. I've got to give you a little history. In 2013, the I-9 was changed. It went to a 9-page document. The previous I-9, the employer and the employee filled out 1 page. If you'll notice on your I-9s, if you go to page 7, that's the employee portion that they need to complete. Page 8 is the portion that the employer completes. Page 9 is the list of documentation that is acceptable for you as an employer to have to complete that other page. Why did they do that? To make your life as a business owner and a practice manager a little bit more difficult. But basically because the government needs revenue. That's because true compliance to this I-9 is very complex. And I'm going to show you why it is. And the audits are increasing with respect to I-9s. They have 20,000 auditors throughout the United States with respect to ICE, the immigration compliance people. Okay? And where do you begin? Because right there it says I-9 enforcement is at an all-time high. It's not a question of when, not if, an organization will be audited. And that's from an attorney that is very involved in this type of compliance. Same thing from the U.S. attorney. Not tolerate actions that mislead the United States and circumvent lawful immigration process, whether undertaken by a single individual or one of the largest corporations in the world. Because one of the situations with the I-9 is it states, are you a citizen of the United States, or do you have a green card? Because it literally says, what is your status to be able to work in the United States? Well, that's all fine, and they did that for a good reason. But now because they need revenue, what they have done is, if you'll notice this, I'm going to use my finger to point. When you see clear up there, let me see how far up I can get there. In the green where it says Kimmy, okay? And you will see, with respect to how she signed, she didn't sign her name. You have to sign your name exactly as you put it in the document. Can you use a P.O. box number, which is the next one down? No. That's incorrect. That's a mistake. See where the purple is? Those are in blank. That's a no-no. That's a fine. As you can see, here's your green. You can see what happened because of the legibility. Okay? No signature here. There's her name. And if you don't, and guess what? She put her first name where the last name box was. Error. And that can cause a fine. Next one. These are the ones that they did not put that are blank. If you don't put an N/A in there, more fines. And more incorrect places. You can see these. See that what says 10/22/13? What's wrong with that? That should be perfectly fine. Well, guess what? It's not digitally correct. It has to be the whole year. 10/12/2018. And in this case, it's wrong because it has to be the date that they actually are signing it. 10/22/13 isn't the date because it should be 14. You notice up there he's done the date wrong again. The date's wrong again here. Well, guess what? That's 3 errors. And if you have more than 50% of your I-9 wrong, that's when you get the fines. You notice here a P.O. box, not allowed. Another error. Notice that. It's not within the lines. They didn't color in the lines and they didn't write in the lines. Guess what? Ding! Another error. Again, the date. What's wrong with that date? Wasn't within the 3 days of hire. When they actually start, you have to have that. It has to be all completed. The employee and employee portion, both. Employee and employer has to be completed within the 3 days of hire. If you have a date that's after the 3 days of hire, ding, wrong, another error. And besides, guess what? This time you got the 2000 in there, but it's still wrong because it's the wrong date. It's not within the compliance period. Notice up there? That list, it's A or B and C. Well, didn't color in the lines, first of all, and also put the wrong thing in the wrong column. Ding, mistake. That's how it costs you money. That had 23 errors on it. Over $900 just for one I-9. Okay, you say to me, well, how do I correct it, Linda? You have to attach the wrong I-9 and redo another I-9. Because if you don't, you're not in compliance. Oh, and you have to put the note on there why you did it. So how do the fines work? Here you go. First offense can go from $110 to $1,100, and you can see 50% or more, $935. They don't really care if you're at 49%. It would have only cost you $770. So that's how much money it can cost you. That's the first offense. Second offense goes up. Third offense goes up more. I mean, it's what do they want to do with it? Does the government need money? Yeah, and that's why. And these are very nitpicky situations. Not coloring in the lines, not putting in the digital date, you know, and also that one showed it didn't sign. Well, if they didn't sign exactly the way that they put their name in, if I would sign L.J. Johnston and I put in Linda J., mistake. But the worst one is the blank ones where you have to put N/A, because each one of those are a mistake. So here's an audit. 10 total employees, 9 total Form I-9s available because you have 3 days to do this in. After the notice, you have 3 days to get your I-9s out there ready for them to look at, because they should be kept separate in a file, not in the employee file, but separate. What I like to do is make sure that you have that available very close to the employee file to make sure you have it. 4 Form I-9s with technical violations, and it was the first offense, right? The resulting fine, 5 total substantive violations out of the 10, so 50% of the employees were wrong. Fine per form at 50%, $935. You can do the math. $4,675. And there's more. If the employee no longer works for you, you have a certain amount of time to retain the Form I-9. And you can retain it too long, and you can retain it too short a period of time. And there's a formula, of course, for you. So it's the date the employee began work for pay. Then add 3 years to the date on line 1. Does this sound like an income tax return almost? So, the date the employment was terminated, add 1 year to the date on line 2, and which date is later, A or B, and then enter the latter date. That's how long you have to retain the I-9. So, when you have a situation like that, they say, okay, have you kept it long enough? Have you not kept it long enough? Because it's not only your current employees, it's employees you've had before. Well, you're fine if you threw them away, but if you're a pack rat, like most employers are, they keep them. You can get fined for that too. So basically what they're doing to you is the whole inspection process starts with a notice that you have 3 days to produce the I-9s. And then they go through all of the forms and they do all of these things to help you make sure that you're compliant. And then when you're not compliant, you can actually be criminally charged, which is very important why you have the employee fill out that one page. A lot of employers still have the old I-9 form that is not the 2013 edition. And that one has all of the information on one page. Well, guess what? That is another violation. So they're really coming down hard on I-9 clerical errors to drive home the point that the integrity of employment records are as important to the federal government as integrity of tax files or banking records. And that is from ICE itself, which is that's Daniel Bennett, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So that's what really is important these days on this. And I have this separated out for anybody who needs some additional information. You've got my name on the bottom of every page in your little notebook. Give me a holler, or it's in the card. This is the W-4. And again, as I said, please make sure that your employee, this top part, the lines there, the middle third, that gives them an idea of how many exemptions they should take. And then they have to complete all of that. The only place the employer puts their information is right on the bottom. And it's very important if they change an address, if they change their federal status withholding, they get married, they change their name, they need to fill out another W-4 and it needs to be in their file. The one other thing that's really important these days is the Affordable Care Act. That is every new employee, in order to be able to buy insurance on the marketplace, has to have a form from their employer that states the employer either provides or does not provide health insurance. If they don't have that form, they cannot go to the marketplace to buy insurance. So, what you need an employee's file for payroll: hiring and exit letters, disciplinary, that's all there is to it. And the classification of a 1099 or a W-4 category is basically, do you withhold taxes or do you not? A 1099 can be a vendor, it can be a subcontractor. But if it's somebody, say, doing telemarketing for you, then the one thing I do urge you, as soon as that you do hire somebody, then you can ask for a Social Security card and information from them. Until you offer them the job, you cannot do that, even if it's a 1099. But I do urge you to make sure that you get the Social Security cards, a copy of it, because you will have to file the 1096 for the 1099 information with the federal government, and if there's a mismatch on the Social Security card and that person has left your employ, it is harder than heck to find it. And you can be held responsible for those fines. So, employer record keeping, it's hours worked in overtime. That's basic. If they are an exempt employee, their salary. If they're a non-exempt employee, you're going to pay them hourly, you're going to pay them overtime depending upon their classification and the federal wage standards. And we can help you discover all of those. Sick leave and vacation pay, since Florida is an at-will state, those are ones that you set as the employer. And an employment manual is very, very important. And you should have one because it does state what you expect from your employees and the rules of your company. Exempt and non-exempt employees, I explained. Basically, exempt are salaried, non-exempt are people that work maybe by the day, by the project, by the hour. Payroll confidentiality and how to maintain it. The easiest way is if you are a company, please make sure that the person doing the payroll is properly protected, password and ID protected with respect to your payroll records. Sometimes people say, I'll have another separate little laptop that I know that that person is the only person going to use it, will be locked someplace safe during non-business hours. But again, password and ID protected. Because once you have the information, you do not want one employee to know how much the other employee makes. You do not want any of those records available to anybody. It's got social security numbers. It may have your direct deposit information, checking account information. It is very, very, very crucial that those be kept under lock and key if you're keeping paper files. And of course, with the people from the I-9s, they want paper copies unless you put them in the cloud in a properly encrypted, encoded electronic form. It's fun. It is really fun. One of the best ways that I've found for payroll confidentiality is to make sure that you do direct deposit. And that protects you from a financial standpoint because the routing number and your checking account number is never on the stub for direct deposit when you use a payroll service. Doesn't appear. Appears as a 0 if they get the stub. The other thing you can do is make sure that your payroll provider has your employee's email, private email, have them send the paycheck stub to them directly, and make sure that is also password protected. And make it so that that employee can also change it at will, so that they make sure that nobody else sees their information. A lot of people are doing payroll on the internet now, and what's really important on that is that you make sure that, again, it's password protected, you have one contact, and you make sure that where you put that information into the electronic file, that it is very carefully taken care of. If you do paper, make sure it's in a locked area, whether it's a file drawer, a safe, but not out on a shelf where anybody can thumb through it. Absolutely never. And the benefits of the direct deposit, it's time sensitive, it's paperwork is very easy to do. You just need a blank voided check from the employee and whatever bank information that they have. And then that can be put away under lock and key, or you can electronically put it away under lock and key. And the procedures are very simple, as I said. Form, blank voided check, send it to your payroll provider. It's a little bit more difficult when you're trying to do it yourself, but you can. The employee duties with state unemployment compensation, and this has become very, very important to a lot of employers. That's one of the reasons you do the disciplinary documents, so that you do have a record, because they will ask you. Because if you need to apply for the number, once you have your unemployment number, it's called the reemployment number now, and it comes from the state of Florida Department of Revenue, and it's just a minor 13-page application. Guess how many pages Georgia has? 3. But because we're the professional employee organization capital of the Western world, or state of the Western world, they are being very, very careful and want to know everything about you before you get your state unemployment number. So you need to complete the DR1, which gets you the number. And then your employer tax rate is determined when you first get your number, it will be 2.7 for the first 10 quarters. And then after that, it depends upon how many employees claim against you. And it can go up to 5.4%. And what qualifies an employee for this compensation, and how does he apply? He applies again to State of Florida Department of Revenue. And what qualifies, if you lay a person off, that will qualify him. If you fire him, that will qualify him. Even if he quits voluntarily, if you're not careful with that exit letter, he can go and ask for state unemployment. And because of our economic situation in the last 3 years, a lot of people got unemployment that maybe wouldn't have before. When they apply for the compensation, they fill out their forms, and then you get a call from the reemployment people, state unemployment. And they ask you a lot of questions. Was there disciplinary action? What was the situation? How did they do? What caused the employee to leave your employee? And sometimes people will say 90-day probationary. That's not a problem. I got a 90-day probationary letter. Doesn't help. Doesn't help at all. All it does is let the employee know you have your eyes on them, and that you're expecting them to follow the duties in the job description, which was put in your employee handbook, which is very important, as I said. So, say my employee has done all of these things, they call you up for the phone interview, and you have a phone interview between the three of you, the employee, the employer, and the state people. And one of the things they're going to ask is, have you disciplined? Have you gone through 3 disciplinary actions? Have you tried to resolve the situation? What have you done? And I had a perfect example. Not 1 week ago, the employee actually fell asleep on the job, and we're supervising children. He was written up for that. He was late and didn't call. He was written up for that. And he left early and left children unsupervised, and he was written up for that. He did not get unemployment compensation. It's now called reemployment. You'll have to forgive me. He did not. They finally, but it had to be something very concrete. It can't be because he didn't do his job right. He went back twice, still didn't get it. So they are being a little bit more responsive to employers' needs these days, but the disciplinary action record is extremely important. So the workers' compensation, what is that? Because people do get confused. Workers' compensation is a type of insurance, and it's very unusual in that the employee gives up the right to sue the employer for sickness, death, injury on the job or during the course of their job duties. And what's important about it is the rates are set by the state depending upon how many claims there are in any of the 9,999 workers' comp codes that they have. Let's use clerical, for example, 8810. It's a very inexpensive code. And it's inexpensive because there's a lot of people in it, and we all know that if there's enough money, the claims are very few. So that's why the code is so inexpensive. Now, if you were in New York State after 9/11, I can guarantee you their rates went up. But that basically is what it is, and you can do it one of 2 ways. You can take the responsibility on yourself as long as you have under 4 employees, because it will be your responsibility if there is a situation like that. And this is for your employees that you take out taxes for, but also if you have 1099 people that are on your premises and they don't have workers' comp, guess what? They are now starting to enforce that they either have to have workers' comp or they are on yours. So, just FYI, once you get past 4, the state can shut you down if you don't have it. So that's when you transfer the risk if you choose, and you really don't have a choice, and you find somebody who writes workers' compensation insurance. Again, your duties: find the agent, get the workers' compensation insurance, make sure that they're properly classified. You will pay a premium based on your estimated payroll, and then they'll come and audit you to see if you really did the payroll correctly. Any questions? Because that's it.
The question is, if somebody works and it's below 90 days, even though the 90-day probationary period is there, they still would get unemployment? They still may apply for unemployment. Wow.
Yes, because that does not negate your responsibility. Everybody thought it did. It does not. Sorry. Yeah, that's the truth. I think the thing that is the most important thing is on the I-9, the compliance issue. And that's the one thing I really, really wanted to stress, was the compliance on the I-9, because there's so many technical situations that are just really nitty-gritty things that shouldn't be. I'm really upset about what they expect you to color in the box and do the things the way that you should.
Here's one question on that I-9 compliance. I assume we're talking about the paper form of the I-9. I know a lot of employers keep digital copies of those as well, but there are also other regulations they got to abide by that require them to keep all of their digital records for X number of years. What do you do in that case where, I mean, is ICE coming after you if you keep a digital copy of that I-9 for 4, 5, 6 years because it's under a different regulation?
No, what the problem is on the ICE, on the I-9s, they are going to look for, the idea of putting them on the digital ones is so that you've got it all in one place so you can download it, because they're going to look at that and they're going to consider that with respect to how long you have to keep it or how short a period of time you have to keep it. And one of the big problems with this is if you have not done the I-9 appropriately and you find out about it and you know it's not right, you need to attach a new I-9 completed correctly to the old I-9. You cannot throw it away. And then, if I am correct, and I will double check on this for you, the date of hire pertains to that. So say you're at 2 years from the date that person was still hired, 2 years to the date. You still would have to keep that another year. Even if they left at the end of 28 months. You would still have to keep that on record. Then once the 36 months have expired, you need to get rid of that. Because if you keep it, that's another violation. So, are there any more questions? If not, that's your basic payroll 101 in a box. Thank you so much for attending.